Welcome back, my fellow cotton drifters, to the second week of straight Higurashi content. In the last episode, we covered all of Satokowashi-hen, talking about why Satoko is attempting to trap Rika, and about who the mysterious Hunteru could possibly be. Today's video will be following suit right where that one left off, so if you haven't already seen that, I would really recommend you go watch it for full context of what this video will be about. There will be a card on the screen right now in case you haven't already seen it, so go check that out. Now, this video is only really possible because of how long making Satokowashi-hen took, and how long reading Umineko took, because the waiting around and working has gotten us to the Sotsu trailer and promo arts. It's because of those releases that today we're going to revisit all of the past arcs in Go. We got a lot of information in Satokowashi and the Sotsu trailer to help us decode the mysteries in these arcs, and I believe we might just be able to get to the bottom of almost all of what's happening. One important thing to note is that Satoko has one injection of H173, so she can't go giving everyone stage 5 whenever she wants. She has to carefully select one target and execute her plan that way. However, I don't actually know if she uses the injections at all until Nekodamashi-hen. I think that H173 might actually, for the most part, be a red herring to steer off viewers from what might potentially be happening under the surface. On reviewing Go for this video, the majority of the occasions where someone developed the syndrome I could see being natural or having been injected. So it's because of this that I don't think it will be exclusively black and white, as I expect these arcs to have been pure chaos behind the scenes. But without further ado, let's go and check out Onidamashi-hen. Man, oh man. Onidamashi-hen, the arc that started something for me and my channel that I never would in my wildest of dreams have expected. Despite this arc happening only about 7 months ago, this already is pretty nostalgic for me. Without Onidamashi-hen, I would never have made a video on Higurashi, and I never would have a wonderful viewer such as yourself watching this video. I owe a lot to this arc and to my audience as well. You guys rock, and I cannot be more thankful. With that being said, a lot in my original video was correct, but there were some things that were wrong and some things that need to be elaborated on. So let's take a moment to flip the chessboard. Thanks to the Sotsu trailer, we know one important detail, which is that Mamiya Rena, the woman that sleeps with Rena's dad, is in fact in the show. This means that my theory of this being the Sumihori-boshi fragment is correct. At least, on the surface it is. With the knowledge that Teppei turns over a new leaf in Satokowashi, this should most likely carry over into this fragment. I know there's a chance he might not remember, and it was a one-time thing, but we're tackling this video with the assumption that he will remember, since Hunteru said these memories are going to accumulate over time and people will remember more often. Anyways, what this means is that Teppei would have no reason to make Rena sleep with Rena's dad, as Teppei was Rena's pimp, and Rena was attempting to get a large sum of money from Rena's dad for Teppei. This changes the dichotomy of this arc a lot, as we know there should be nothing going on unless Satoko meddles with things. I was talking with my friend Amazing Sam about this arc in my Discord server, which, by the way, the Discord's pretty awesome. You guys should join it if you haven't already. Very nice community. Anyways, he said that with Teppei turning over a new leaf, it's equally as possible that Rena herself could get a redemption here. But her redemption is misunderstood by Rena since she remembers the other fragment, leading her to kill Rena anyways. This can be furthered since in the original, there is a scene where Rena chokes Rena, and in the trailer we see a scene of Rena reaching to her throat as if to strangle herself with dull eyes. This likely implies she remembers this fragment. Who knows if this will end up happening or not though, but I did think it was really interesting, so I figured I should share it. If we hop back to episode 1, we see Rena gazing at Satoko once she gets punched in the face with the boxing glove. After this, Rena leaves suddenly. She likely looks at Satoko like this because of Teppei and Rena's relationship with one another. This is heavily confirmed when we see Rena standing at the door in the trailer to what appears to be the Hojo household, with Mamiya standing behind her. This implies that Rena is very well aware of what's going on with her father and Mamiya, and is the cause of her strange behavior. However, alternatively, this could actually be a scene where Rena remembers the events of Sumibora-Hoshi-hen, as she has the stare occasionally where she looks blankly at things throughout Onidamashi. Another character that had a moment like this where they blankly stared at something was Keiichi, and when he did, he was remembering the events of Onikakushi. We didn't get the perspective of Rena's thoughts in the original arc for Go, but in Sotsu, we most definitely are going to, which means we could see her remembering killing Satoko's uncle in that scene, or possibly a few other things. Alternatively though, she likely could have remembered Sumibora-Hoshi-hen upon waking up, as in Go, Keiichi has remembered past fragments while he's waking up. And she could have proceeded to think about it throughout the day, since I imagine dreaming about murdering somebody would stay in your head for a little bit. We see Satoko leave immediately after Rena, which we now know that she is likely either injecting Rena with Hinamizawa syndrome or planting lies in her brain to make tragedy occur. The latter being more likely of the two, as we see her offering Rena a deal in the Sotsu trailer. In the trailer, Satoko tells her that she will assert her happiness in another world, likely implying to her and her father, if she convinces Rika to stay in the town. The day after this, it rains, which we see Rena kill someone at the dump when it rains in the trailer. I would say she kills Mamiya, or possibly even both her and Teppei here. Both of their deaths happening in the dump follow with the original fragment, and makes sense with the scenes we got in the trailer. Teppei is supposed to be very passive now, since he turned over a new leaf, but it's very possible Satoko either convinced him to go to the dump or injected him with H173 so that he became agitated. After this brief scene of rain that lasts only for a few seconds on July 14th in the first episode, the date changes to June 15th, where we see Keiichi arrive to help Rena get out the Kenta doll. But from how startled and anxious her speech patterns are, I think it's safe to say she's currently in the middle of burying a body here. Especially from how panicked she is when Keiichi says that he was there because he heard a man was in need of grave assistance, almost definitely implying that the body she's currently fidgeting with is Teppei's. It is because of Keiichi stumbling upon her that day and his meeting with Oishi after the festival that Rena likely assumes Keiichi now is convinced she committed murder and that he is talking to the police about it. This is hinted throughout as we see Rena stalking Keiichi on multiple occasions. Due to her not wanting to be separated from her father and wanting her father to live happily, she goes to kill Keiichi herself. We know this because she literally goes on a monologue about it while she's scratching her neck right before her and Keiichi fight. In the midst of all of this, Han2 resumes her original state of being Hanyu, bringing Rika back to this point in time, and Rika begins to attempt to unravel the mystery before her. While Keiichi and Rena are having their deathmatch, Satoko is watching them. I had a discussion with a subscriber in my community named Ortalica1st about this, and at first I thought it was a bit odd, but now I completely agree with them that the following occurred. After their deathmatch, Satoko happened to walk into Keiichi's house, either from watching them fight or from the door being unlocked and inviting herself in. Satoko then sees the two of them dead, and she grabs Rena's knife and goes back home to Rika, whom she either killed before Rena and Keiichi's conflict, or after their conflict. It's also possible that Rena killed Rika before she went to Keiichi's house. Satoko then kills Rika if Rika isn't already dead, and she proceeds to kill herself. This way she dies after Rika, and Rena's knife arrives at the scene of their deaths. Although the odds of Satoko killing Rika are not super high, as in the trailer she has no blood on her or her shoes at all. Even the knife, oddly enough, has no blood on it, despite it just being used to stab Keiichi like 50 times. But maybe Satoko likes to clean herself off and her weapons before using them on other people. I don't know, and I don't particularly judge murder.
Hold up, wait a minute.
That sounded weird. I do judge murder. I'm not judging Satoko for how she murders people. You know what? It's not important. You guys get what I mean. The one thing I just don't really imagine happening very much is Satoko killing Rika herself, as for the most part, it seems like she wants to convince Rika to stay in the town, not kill Rika a bunch. As much of the idea of Keiichi's mom cheating was cute, I didn't really think it was possible the longer Go went on. Now with the Sotsu trailer, I don't think it's possible anymore at all. I do think that what we just talked about, however, is almost completely what happens in Onidamashi-hen. So our timeline is the fragment starting, with Rena likely remembering past fragments. She talks with Satoko at school, and Satoko tries to strike a deal with her, but probably fails to do so. A few days after, while it's raining, Rena proceeds to kill either Teppei and Rena, or just Rena, and kill Teppei at a later date. Keiichi arrives the next day while she's stowing away a body, and here she likely remembers another fragment while Keiichi remembers killing Rena and Mion. It's because of this that the two become paranoid of one another, with Keiichi thinking Rena will kill him and Rena thinking Keiichi knows about her murders. She then proceeds to stalk him and then has a duel with him at his house. After this, Satoko grabs the knife Rena used and takes it back home. Here, Rika either is already dead due to Satoko or to Rena, or she is alive and Satoko kills her. The former here being more likely the case. Satoko then kills herself to move on to the next fragment, as Rika being dead is her one requirement. Satoko might have either injected Teppei or Rena with H173, but as I've already said, I don't really think Satoko used H173 in this arc. Rena's descent into madness seems more natural than manufactured. One thing that I would like to discuss is the possibility of Hantu being a player on this game board. We know from the original series that Hanyu could manifest herself onto the board as an actual person, holding matter and interacting with other people. This could very well happen with Hantu, seeing as she is almost identical to Hanyu and has stronger powers. With this logic, it makes sense that she could possibly interfere with a lot of events, making it to where Satoko's plans don't always go as she wants them to, and adding an extra level of chaos to what could possibly be happening behind the scenes. Before we cover the next arc, I would like to say that I think almost the entire trailer just covers the first arc of Sotsu, and not really too much else in it. So we won't be able to use it to piece the puzzle together too much more. Now, let's check out the next arc. Watadamashi-hen.
分かってるって俺たちも応援してるぞリカちゃんファイトオンだぜ何を心配してもしなくても
Watadamashi-hen, an arc that originally I thought I nailed, but the more that Go went on, the more I began to really doubt myself. Let's flip around the chessboard again then. Based on our logic from Onidamashi, it would make sense for Satoko to try next to convince Mion to talk Rika out of leaving Hinamizawa. And this theory becomes very plausible as her and Mion leave the game store together. Now, Mion is known for not developing Hinamizawa syndrome at all because of her superb communication skills. But with the factor of H173, her developing the syndrome becomes very possible. On top of that, Mion is much more bold and open with her feelings regarding Keiichi and even getting pretty aggressive in some scenes. All of this is coupled with the hint that Rena left of things being a lot more different than they appeared on the surface. So what does it mean? First, I think we need to take into account that Shion also acts a lot more romantic with Keiichi in this arc than the other ones. It's very possible that Satoko turned the two sisters against each other in a competition for Keiichi, resulting in their outward aggression towards one another in a few scenes, as well as them being dead in the well. Allow me to explain. A lot of the community seems to think there is a possibility of the two not being switched at birth. But I don't think that's the case, as in the next arc, Shion acts like her normal self when she bashes Keiichi with a chair. Because Shion is not known for being embarrassed like this, I would also like to specify that the Shion Keiichi meets in Angel Mort that blushes is actually Mion. We can tell this is Mion further as when Keiichi mentions meeting Shion to Rena and Mion the next day, Mion blushes. The visual novel shows us that Shion actually met Keiichi for the first time at the dessert fiesta, but it's more likely that their first time meeting each other is at the bike scene due to the attitude and demeanor of the Sonozaki in the scene matching up a lot more with Shion. Given the options, it makes sense that Satoko used Mion's love for Keiichi to convince her to persuade Rika to stay in town, and to add pressure to make sure Mion fulfilled her mission, either Satoko or Hantu manipulated Shion to falling more for Keiichi in this arc compared to her in other arcs. We can apply this logic to the scene at the festival where Satoko is missing from the group. The only person she could be talking to in this scene is Shion, as Shion had also just left. Alright though, now is where some fuckery happens. I have no idea how to explain this without looking insane, but hear me out here. I think Satoko talking to Shion led to Shion killing Kimiyoshi and Orya. She probably used Satoshi as evidence for her to attack them, and as such she does. The next day, Rika's death is a little bit of the mystery, I won't lie. I know in a recent video I thought someone was holding the door shut, but I've since doubted myself quite a bit. In Nekodamashi, we can see a latch and a lock on this door, as well as the door having a slab that goes all the way across of it. But in Watadamashi, the lock and latch are both missing, and the slab is halved. This becomes very weird when you think about it a little bit more. Why would Mion look for Rika in a bathroom in Nekodamashi that has a lock on the outside? This implies that there could be multiple entrances to this bathroom, since Rika would have no way to get into it otherwise, as she wouldn't be able to lock herself in. The constructor workers Mion mentioned are probably just the mountain dogs trying to inform Rika of Takano's departure, as we saw them do this in Nekodamashi-hen, with Mion using them as an alibi since they likely did in fact talk to Rika. Once they leave, here's where things really change from the original theory I had. Keiichi kills Rika. Whoa, calm your horses, people. This may seem like an insane claim, but let's look at the facts here. Keiichi and Shion visited the shrine with Takano, starting his paranoia thinking he was going to be marked for the curse. They talk about it after, furthering his paranoia and making him more nervous. Keiichi unintentionally gives away that he didn't see Rika's dancing to the group, making him a bit more paranoid. Oishi talks about it in a way later that night with him, in a way that is kind of unusual for Oishi, furthering his paranoia. Then Shion and him talk on the phone about Tomitake and Takano going missing, once again, likely furthering his paranoia even more. The next day, we find out that he didn't sleep much the night before. So now, not only is he paranoid, but he's also sleep deprived and likely very stressed. And then later, he decides to confide in Rika, but Rika freaks out on him and says that they're all basically dead anyways. We can use the Sotsu trailer here to prove our point even further, as we see in the ladder scene in the trailer. In it, Mion is crying while holding the ladder, which is very different from the one that Keiichi saw where she was shaking it like a madman. What this means is that Keiichi is hallucinating and that he has become an unreliable narrator. The door he sees is completely different than the door Mion sees, because he's keeping himself mentally from entering that room and seeing a dead body. This means that because of his paranoia and fear of Oyashiro-sama, with Rika being the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama, he likely killed Rika to save his own life. At least in his mind. If there are multiple entrances into the bathroom, he locked the door from the inside and then left that room. Of course, this is if his mental isn't just blocking him from entering that room. Mion saw the construction workers and assumed from Keiichi's odd behavior that he killed Rika, which is why she gives him an alibi. Mion had given people alibis before in the original, for example when Rena killed Rina and Teppei, and then again when Keiichi obviously killed Teppei. With these deductions, it becomes quite clear that Keiichi was probably the culprit in this instance. We can further the possibility of this happening if we go back to his phone call with Shion. He throws all of the blame on her, asking her how she'll make it right since Tomitake and Takano are gone. How does she plan to fix this? Well, I believe her attempt to right her wrongs was to eliminate Oreo and Kimiyoshi. Shion had killed these two in the past, and I don't see why she wouldn't do it again. Because of Shion's rampage, Mion was likely forced to kill Shion. That is why Mion appears as if she hasn't slept that well either the next morning, because she had to kill her sister, which is something Mion as a character would never want to do. This is also likely why she's crying in this scene in Sotsu, because she is confiding in Keiichi because she loves and trusts him after seeing her sister kill her family and having to kill her sister to save herself. Satoko also clearly comes to this conclusion that Keiichi did it, immediately casting suspicion on him, since she knows that he can be violent from visiting prior fragments. She likely knows that Rika has died, but she doesn't know how, and thanks to Mion answering, she can deduce Mion was involved somehow. This is why she visits the Sonozaki estate later, because she has to confirm that Rika is dead before she can end a loop. Otherwise, she won't return to Rika's loop if she kills herself, and Rika is still alive, making all of her endeavors completely pointless. And it is because of Keiichi's panic state at school that Mion invites Keiichi over later. Mion locks Keiichi up to keep him safe from likely himself and from others around him. Mion helps to calm his nerves by telling him the curse is man-made, and it is housed by the great families, on top of the fact that she plans to deal with this head on. This should automatically bring down a great deal of his stress and paranoia, as Mion has dispelled a lot of the illusions in his head, Mion being clutch here like usual. The construction workers, also known as the Mountain Dogs, likely arrive at the Sonozaki estate in search of Rika, since the Sonozakis usually know what's happening in a town. Mion probably addresses them as minions, since these guys' known purpose is to protect Rika, as established in the original series. The Sonozakis knowing their true purpose would make sense, since they're one of the great families. Satoko comes to visit Mion since she talked with her earlier to convince Rika to stay in town, and assumes that Mion was involved in Rika's disappearance. So yes, Satoko goes there to confront Mion about what happened to her beloved. It is here where either Satoko shoots Mion and then herself, or they both shoot each other, as the gun on the ground is the same one Satoko had in Nekodamashi. Although I find it very hard to believe that Mion would shoot Satoko here, so the former is the more likely of the two. If you look closely at this scene too, you can see that one of Satoko's hands is in a position that appears as if she had just snapped. This is snapping being hinted at from Arc 2. Really nice work here with this one, Passion. You guys are really good and on the ball with the story. All of this explains the weird tension between Mion and Shion, since Shion has a bit of hatred that shows for her, and how Mion gets outwardly jealous a few times. This also explains how Satoko would be involved with any of this. While overall, this might be the most accurate prediction in the world, I at least think it's fairly accurate at this current point in time. The Devil's Proof is one hell of a thing. Now, let's talk about the next arc that changed the entire show in my opinion. Tataridamashi-hen, probably said that wrong, is the longest out of the question arcs, and honestly probably has the most amount of meaningful substance and plot reveals in it. This is the arc where together, we deciphered how suspicious a lot of Satoko's actions were, as well as how she was likely faking her abuse. However, with the revelation of Teppei's newfound kindness in Satokowashi-hen, I find it absolutely impossible now that Teppei was actually abusing her, and I firmly believe that it was faking in this arc. Let's flip around the chessboard again, shall we? Satoko said in Satokowashi that she planned to use her uncle to his utmost potential, and I believe that is what she did here in this arc. After her attempts to have both Rena and Mion talk to Rika failed, she decided to resort to what happened in Higurashi-hen, acting as if her uncle had trapped her at home and was abusing her. Most of the details we pointed out in the original video I still think hold very true for a lot of things even now, in retrospect. Satoko was faking abuse to bring the village closer together and to make Rika want to stay. In the process, since she never went through Higurashi-hen, she realized how much the village and everyone cared about her, specifically Keiichi. There is a large focus on her time with Keiichi in this arc, and that's probably because she realized that Keiichi really does care about her. It's because of this that we find out very clearly in this arc why Keiichi lives every time. He is the new Nini, the new Satoshi. Satoko let go of her older brother in Satokowashi, and she found her new older brother in Tataridamashi-hen. The way she hugged Keiichi was genuine. She really seems to genuinely care for him. And this is one of the reasons I believe in every arc he lives. Now, I have two theories about what happened in this arc, so let's discuss the first one. We know she only has one injection of H173, which in this arc appears to have been given to Oishi, and he goes to kill Rika at the festival with Satoshi's bat. It's very clear that Teppei was there originally, but I still believe he disappeared halfway through this arc. When he was on screen, he was, of course, an asshole, but we never see him hanging around the guys he promised Satoko he wouldn't hang around. This means he upheld his promise. This is on top of the fact that Satoko has no bruises on her, once again inferring that he held his promise of never hitting her again. My belief is that Satoko told her uncle that someone at school was bullying her or someone in the town was being mean to her, taking advantage of her now reformed uncle. They would then proceed to live together, and from there she would create the scenario where it appeared to the outside that she was being abused. This isn't out of character for her, as she's done this in the past, faking abuse from her stepdad at one point in time. This is why Child Services didn't take Satoko very seriously, as she had seen this as a prank in the past. The cause of the disappearance, in my opinion, is probably due to overdose. He died probably due to an overdose in Satokowashi-hen by going through a super seizure, with Teppei turning over a new leaf and seemingly only going after guys that were bad for Satoko. I don't believe at all that he attacked Keiichi. It just doesn't make sense. Him waiting in a room in the dark to beat up a child who he doesn't know, it just seems so stupid. How would he even know who Keiichi was? How would he know Keiichi was coming to the house for one thing too? Like, what the hell? It all just seems way too fake. However, it is a little hard to discount the way that he says Keiichi ruined his plan. We know because of Satsukawashi that he wished to reconnect with his family to not die alone. But if Satoko gets forcefully taken away from him, that dream will never happen. So in that sense, it is a bit hard to decode, but there are three lines of possible play. The first being Keiichi walking into that room, and in a fit of fury for ruining his future with Satoko, Teppei attempts to kill Keiichi. Keiichi fights back and kills Teppei, which horrifies Satoko, and Keiichi passes out, seemingly possibly dead. After seeing what she assumes to be her new Nini kill her uncle that turned over a new leaf, and Keiichi presumably maybe dying himself, this is what led her to be more aggressive in Nekodamashi-hen. She then injected Oishi with H173 and gave him the bat to go to town. The second being Keiichi walked into that room, and inside of the room was Oishi. Oishi attacked him, and because of this attack, Keiichi was either knocked out immediately or started hallucinating due to a head injury. He hallucinated Teppei because of the dreams he had of killing him, knowing that he was Satoko's uncle. The third being Keiichi walked into that room and was hit by a trap from Satoko. To keep Keiichi away from going to the festival and getting killed, Satoko proceeded to make sure he was knocked out and unable to go to the festival. Therefore, she is protecting her new Nini from possible danger. She then gave the injection to a knocked out Oishi, maybe whispering in his ear something that Rika was the cause of his troubles, something that would get him riled up, you know, and then she gave him the bat, to which he woke up and went to the festival. Out of the three, I would say the third option is the most likely. Oishi likely would have 100% killed Keiichi if he was the one in the room, and this is on top of the fact that he had no blood on his body at all. Number one isn't as likely because the bloodstains on Satoko's clothes do not match up at all if Teppei was actually there and fought Keiichi. Therefore, the third option is the one with the most ground backing it, and the one that makes the most sense out of the three. Though, let me know down in the comments which one you guys think happened. I'd also like to note that in my original video, we pointed out that Keiichi remembered killing Teppei on several occasions, as well as it appearing that Rena remembered past loops as well. This is the arc where I believe firmly that all of the cast starts to really remember prior events. But again, we'll just have to wait and see. With that out of the way though, I'd like to present my other theory that the Discord and I discussed. This arc actually didn't have anything to do with Satoko, specifically in the last episode. Let me explain. Let's again consider Keiichi, as she clearly seems to end up caring for him in this arc. I expect Satoko thought no one cared for her because of her persecution complex, but after what Keiichi went through, she has a change of heart. It becomes very evident in the beginning with her being around him a lot of the time, and then later at the end of her donning him as the new Satoshi. Now, let's consider Oishi. Oishi appears way more in Hinamizawa than normal, and is referred to a lot more harshly by Irei as well. There are also instances where the camera really focuses just on him, and there are scenes where he is not there normally in the original series. Let's consider the possibility that Oishi is doing background investigation of the three families, or something around those lines. And this leads to him becoming more paranoid being in town, and with the more he finds out. Let's also maybe consider that since everybody is remembering, Oishi himself could also maybe remember some stuff from past events. I don't know how likely this is, but it is possible. With all of these things, Oishi becoming level 5 naturally becomes very possible. Now let's consider this. Teppei actually does attack Keiichi. His reason to attack Keiichi, although a bit strange, they do make sense. If we consider this all with the fact that Satoko seems genuinely surprised when Keiichi is attacked, on top of the fact that the villagers hinted at the curse befalling her this year, then this becomes extremely possible. Satoko's goal in this arc could easily have gone from her wanting to trap Rika to wanting to be with her friends, with Keiichi as the new Nini. This is when she finally realizes that she doesn't need Rika to be completely happy. This is why in Nekodamashi-hen, she seems out of it when she appears at the Cotton Drifting Festival and is much more aggressive with her attacks in that arc as a whole. Satoko changed her initial plan because this is the world she never got to experience because of Matsuri Bayashi, and this is why she seems so heartbroken at the beginning of Nekodamashi. Satoko is the victim of this year's curse because everything she thought she was about to have fell apart right in front of her. I understand this one is a little crackhead, but I see it possibly playing out and making a lot of sense, especially if we consider how sporadic Satoko's actions were in the next arc. There is a lot of gray area here to it though, as we don't know a lot of what happened here behind the scenes, but to be honest, I think I like this theory more than the previous one. Now, Nekodamashi-hen is where things started to get dicey. I noted in my video that it seemed the culprit this time around got extremely desperate with how much they were attacking, and I still think this is the case. Satoko looped for 100 years, and expected her plan to be foolproof, but sees after her first try that Rika will not give in easily. It is after the third try to our knowledge that her being there and witnessing her friends dying and killing each other likely becomes mentally taxing. You can only watch your friends die and kill each other so many times, after all. Her mentally snapping becomes even more abundant if the theory of Oishi's level 5 being natural and Teppei actually attacking Keiichi is true, as everything for her would have gone completely wrong when she least expected it. This becomes extremely evident when the attacks take place in Nekodamashi. All of these attacks happen before the festival, and shit usually hits the fan after or during the festival, so this is a pretty big change. The first happens at an undisclosed time, however the second with Mion's mom takes place 4 days before the festival. Kimiyoshi's takes place after the festival, which, I mean, makes sense, he's an older man, he's a bit slower to act, I don't blame him. However, the most drastic changes in dates are Keiichi's rampage on Angel Mort and Satoko's Hot Dog Fest. Keiichi attacks Angel Mort on June 13th, almost a full week before the festival. Satoko's Hot Dog Fest took place on June 12th, this one actually being a full week before the festival. This means that Rika came back on June 12th, and Satoko struck when Rika respawned, clearly becoming very impatient. Satoko's true feelings about how mentally taxing killing people is, and about how she wishes Rika would stay in the town, come to the surface here as she attacks Rika during the Hot Dog Fest. Rika even notes that this specific fragment is over before she could even start. However, with Satoko growing more desperate, Rika also grew extremely close to giving up. In Nekodamashi, Rika clearly gave Satoko exactly what she wanted to hear. She surrendered and became gaslit into thinking her way out was to stay in the town. However, since Rika gets to live, this is the first time she gets to see that Takano is apologetic for her past actions. Satoko quite literally had the cat in the box right where she wanted it, when she unintentionally revealed that she was looping to Rika. This screen cuts off here, but we know that thanks to Hanyu, Rika can remember everything that happens to her in a fragment up to her death. Speaking of that, this right here is another reason why I believe Hanyu is Han too, that I mentioned previously in the last video. Satoko asks her in Satokowashi if she can give the power to Rika to remember her deaths, and Han-tu says that she can do that. Hanyu, the Broken Horn, could not do this because her powers were not strong enough. It is because of this, on top of the Kotohogushi story, there are similarities in appearance and powers and speech patterns that I believe Han-tu is Hanyu. Let's take another look at Kotohogushi. We know that Hanyu wanted her daughter to kill her so she one day wouldn't become evil again. Her daughter ignores this, and instead Hanyu hides in the shadows. In case she ever did become evil again, the sword was sealed in the statue of Oyashiro-sama. With this, the tradition of the Furude Shrine became to guard the sword and the tool set for hundreds of years. On top of this, to symbolize Hanyu's broken horn, Ryu had the statue broken by Satoko when she was younger, as we know. However, the tradition of the Furudes was broken by Rika in June of 1984, as she declared with the village heads that there was no curse anymore. After this, she left the village to attend St. Lucia. Rika is the only surviving member of the Furude family, and she broke tradition for the first time in who knows how long. It's because of this that I believe Han-tu was released. And as we see when Satoko enters the shed in Satokowashi-hen, it's fixed. This is to symbolize that Hanyu is no longer with us, as her broken horn has been healed. The statue is also fixed throughout all of Go, which again furthers that Hanyu was never with us. Since the very beginning, it's always been Han-tu. This point can get even furthered when we do some more digging. There's a promotional image of Rika and Hanyu in the Sea of Fragments, where Hanyu is falling and Rika is desperately reaching for her. Weirdly enough though, Hanyu does not seem to be even trying to take Rika's hand, and instead she is falling with a grin on her face. Let's dig even further with Sotsu promotional art. We'll start with the very first teaser that dropped after Go finished. The visuals aren't super important to this point, but what is important is what Rika is saying. With all of that said, are you still trustworthy? The only two people she could be talking to here are Satoko or Hanyu, as there is no reason for her to ask this to anyone else. Everyone else is trustworthy until they succumb to the syndrome, and I think that this is a question she is asking Hanyu since she uses her adult voice, primarily used when she is speaking to Hanyu. We can then also look at the most recent trailer for Sotsu that dropped, with the only clip of Hanyu in the entire trailer being directly following Han-tu. It is with all this evidence and promotions, as well as the story and subtext in the story, on top of Kotohogushi, that I see absolutely no reason that Han-tu is not Hanyu. But regardless of that, I think that Satoko and Rika both had failing arcs in Onidamashi, Watadamashi, and Tataridamashi. It was after Tataridamashi that Satoko started to attack more to guarantee Rika would give up, as she didn't want to go through heartbreak like that again. And she almost succeeded, but she blundered instead. Before we get into the last segment of this video, I'd like to quickly talk about Go's opening. We've gotten a lot of context for both its opening and visuals thanks to Satokowashi-hen, so let's take a look at it. The opening starts with our cast all standing in various poses for the camera as it pans around their surroundings. Keiichi is standing with his bat vertically from the camera's perspective, only revealing half of his face. Rena is standing directly in front of the camera, with her full face showing and some of it being covered by her bangs. Mion and Shion are sitting back to back in the Sonozaki residence, with Mion's face being shown completely and Shion's face only having half of it showing. And lastly, Satoko and Rika are standing back to back in the schoolhouse, with Rika's face being revealed completely and Satoko only being half shown. I'd like to specifically draw attention to their posing, with some characters having half their faces shown like Keiichi, Satoko, and Shion, while others like Rika, Mion, and Rena have their faces fully revealed. Often, it is easy to distinguish when a person isn't telling the truth based off of their body language and facial expressions. The most popular form of this is when the person refuses to look you in the eyes. I believe that in the case of Go's opening, the characters with their eyes half revealed aren't being completely honest. We the audience cannot see their faces, and mainly their eyes. Therefore, they're not telling the truth to us with their body language. A great example of this is the scene with Satoko and Rika. We know Rika very well because of the original series, and while she lies occasionally to people in Hinamizawa, we the audience know that she is lying. So to us, we always know Rika's truth. Satoko, however, is turned away from Rika and from us for a multitude of reasons, such as bringing Rika back to this hell due to her selfish desires, as well as possibly injecting people with a disease. She's led to the death of many people and herself, so Satoko is not someone to be trusted. This is why only half of her face was revealed, and why we are mostly shown her back. Now let's apply this knowledge to Shion and to Keiichi. We're introduced to Shion, however we know nothing about what's going on with her in the background of things. She's also known for manipulating both Keiichi and Mion in the original series, so she could just as likely be doing that in Go. What we do know from Go is that Shion is very attached to Satoko, so it is very likely she could be working with her in some situations. Basically, Shion is also not to be trusted, which is why we see half of her face and are mostly shown her back. Keiichi's character being half shown is a bit more complicated, as it could suggest that he 1. Was not a reliable narrator for any of Gou, as he was hallucinating in a good portion of them, or 2. Keiichi's character is more complex than we realize. We already know that in Gou, he remembers events from past fragments very often, so it's extremely possible that this could have been a very big toll on him as a person. We know that his voice actor also has stated that Keiichi is very complicated this time around, so who knows what all of this could truly mean. All we know for certain is that Keiichi might not be as trustworthy as he appears. There is one other character that this applies greatly to in this opening, and that character is Hanyu. The only instance we see of her in the entire opening sequence is just her standing, with her back facing the camera. We never see her again in this sequence, and she's very explicitly shown in the frames where the singer says, "I believe what you said." This could be taken in quite a few ways. It could be taken as Hanyu being Hanyu, like I've been suggesting, or it could possibly be here to suggest that Rika trusted Hanyu when she shouldn't have. However, since this song is from Satoko's perspective mostly, this could possibly be taken as Hanyu betraying Satoko and Sotsu, but we don't have any proof that this could be happening at this current moment. Speaking of song lyrics, yes, this song is entirely based from the perspective of Satoko, as this song can almost entirely be applied to Satokowashi-hen. I had this great clip comparison sent to me from somebody on my Discord from Reddit, so I'll share it here with you guys. I don't claim any credit for this find at all. I didn't mention this at all in my last video because I thought this was widely known, but it's been pointed out to me that a lot of people actually didn't know about this. I'm not going to talk about irregular entropy, as I find that the ending as a whole is pretty self-explanatory. God Syndrome can either be seen as recounting the events of the old series, or as a hint to what was really happening in Gou. Keiichi wielding his bat, going stage 5 and killing people. Rena witnesses her dad sleeping with Rena. Mion and Shion disagree about something, likely on the night of the festival. Satoko moves in with Teppei, but that lingering PTSD is still there. Stuff like that. I'm not going to talk about the album arts yet though, as I want to talk about that in our next section, which we're going to get to right now. So as far as actual predictions for Sotsu, I have 3 main thoughts, not including any Umineko thoughts in this video. Don't worry, if you haven't seen Umi, there will be no mentions of it here. Now let's talk about my first thought process. Nekodamashi-hen's ending solidifies the downfall of Satoko in a game of cat and mouse. The game board has been simplified by removing Teppei's abuse and Takuno not being evil anymore. Rika can remember all of the events in fragments due to the power that presumably Hanyu gave to her, and we know now that everyone will continue to remember past fragments and greater strengths as the series goes on. This means that Rika will remember that Satoko is the other looper, and thanks to the entire gang being present when Satoko pulls out a gun, they are all likely to remember this too. I can't remember if I mentioned this in my last video or not, but the reason that Keiichi likely really survives every arc is due to his ability to remember more than others. I know I mentioned earlier that it's because he's the new Nini, but I believe that is half of the reason, and that this is the other half of the reason he lives. If Keiichi remembered his cause of death or him killing someone, that would mean very bad things for Satoko and for her plans. This is why him being there when Satoko makes her big reveal is going to be a massive problem for her, as he is the miracle worker, the symbol of hope if you will. This town is going to be remembering the past events in greater strengths as the loops go on, meaning they will remember Satoko's crimes more and more. Satoko has accidentally set herself up for the perfect checkmate, and what I believe will lead to a Hinamizawa turf war. Let's take a look at the album covers I mentioned earlier. I Believe What You Said has Rena in it with a cold stare standing forward. She's holding Rika's hand, which is in God Syndrome's cover art. They are all in a cold environment that is mostly dark, which is a direct juxtaposition to Irregular Entropy's cover art. In it, Satoko is standing with a menacing smile on her face, holding Shion's ribbon with the trees on fire behind her. All 3 of these cover arts come together to form one complete picture, and I think this perfectly embodies why there will be a turf war. Rika is going to desperately be trying to stop Satoko and to stop her looping, employing any help she can get. Rika has proven to be resourceful in the past, and I don't doubt that that will happen again. We know from the Gou opening that the 2 who will be truthful are Mion and Rena, and this is furthered by their promo art holding hands together. Shion's ribbon being in Satoko's hand likely implies that she will go to Satoko's side, which considering considering the opening would make sense, and this is also considering how indebted she is to Satoko whenever she's on screen in Go. She also has Teppei to likely defend her and protect her, but I don't believe HunTeru will help Satoko. HunTeru is merely just an observer of Satoko's antics, and she's more likely to make things worse than to help. It's because of this that Teppei will actually probably not help her. As we've seen, he already triggers her PTSD. That will likely continue to happen, and I imagine Teppei will hurt more than he helps. Again, HunTeru being an actual player on the board is very possible, and there is a good chance she could be behind the scenes making a lot of things a lot worse. The two deciding factors of the turf war will likely be Takano and Keiichi. Takano, as I've stated in prior videos, can man the mountain dogs as she pleases, and could possibly be one of Rika's strongest pieces in the turf war with her vast knowledge on Hinamizawa syndrome. She'll be willing to do what she can to atone for her sins, so I imagine this could be a potential option. Satoko is aware of Takano potentially being a strong force in their game, which is why Takano is Satoko's biggest concern in Satokowashi. This is on top of the fact that Satoko knows she can't easily manipulate Takano like other villagers, so Takano will likely have a very big part. However, I expect none will have a bigger part in the story and resolution of it than Keiichi. Keiichi is known for being the miracle maker, and the one we've seen keep Rika going. Keiichi will continue to fight when a fight is over, and he has a strong personality that attracts people to him. People will take whatever side he is on. Whichever side Keiichi chooses will 100% win the turf war, and I believe remembering past fragments will affect his character greatly. However, Keiichi will likely choose Rika's side. This is foreshadowed a tiny little bit in the Go manga, where in the resolution of Tataridamashi-hen, he leaves Satoko's side to go and help Rika. It is with all this that I see Rika assembling the Avengers to take down Satoko, similar to how they took down Takano, very possible, while also creating a rift through the village in a scenario like the Dam War did in the past. Now, my other thought process is a bit more complicated. I mentioned that the Matsuri-Bayashi fragment could possibly continue after Satoko gets brought to the second one. With the recent promotional art for Sotsu, this possibility becomes more likely. So let me explain. There are two instances of Satoko and Rika. One of them has the two still in the timeline where they're at St. Lucia, and they learn to bond with one another thanks to the group's help and come to terms with their newfound separation. This way, they learn to Sotsu, or graduate from one another and move on with their lives. However, the other instances of them that return back to the past have to suffer, and how they resolve that situation is unknown to me. At least, in this video. It's really hard to get in depth with this theory without talking about Umineko, so let's go to the next theory. This last theory of mine has two takes, and both involve the Looper Sword. The first possibility is that I believe Rika will get a hold of the fragment and will either kill or stab Satoko with it. This will rid her of her looping powers, and Rika will reset the loop by killing herself to have a normal Satoko again. They live out their lives, but things happen in a very similar manner, like attending St. Lucia, the separation, such like that. They return to Hinamizawa again, and Rika realizes this is where Satoko made contact with HunTeru. This is where they fight with one another, and the group steps in and makes the two talk. Here they resolve their issues with one another and come to terms with growing apart and going their own ways. The second being that Rika stabs HunTeru with the Looper Sword, putting a stop to both of their looping powers. They grow up together very bitterly and events happen in a similar manner, but the group steps in and helps the two of them. Both of these theories, the sword and the Matsuri-Bayashi one, involve Rika realizing she can't have both St. Lucia and Satoko, and that she needs to make a decision. This decision, unfortunately being St. Lucia, is the more likely of the two, with Satoko realizing she wants to be at home in Hinamizawa and coming to terms with living with her true group of friends, and her new Nini Keiichi. This is a very realistic take on things, and fits in with Higurashi's themes a bit more. I think that the turf war is almost definitely going to happen, but how the situation will resolve is where there is a lot of gray area. I do believe that Sotsu likely has two meanings in it. One with graduation being used as a metaphor for separation. Typically when people graduate high school or a school in general, they go their separate ways from their friends. This would mean that Rika and Satoko would accept that they both want different things, and they both go to do their own separate things. It's incredibly realistic, and it holds a lot of weight, with being the one that might actually happen. The other meaning for Sotsu could be graduation into witchhood, but that's a topic for the next video. So with that, this video is coming to a close. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. Be sure to comment on my thoughts or share your own thoughts on what you think might happen in Sotsu down in the comments below. I haven't decided if I'll cover Sotsu at all on this channel, although I will likely stream my reactions to new episodes weekly on Twitch. If you haven't seen or read Umineko yet, this possibly could be the last Higurashi video you watch from me, as I don't know if I'm going to make any more. I do have to say it's been a lot of fun making these videos, and I've really been enjoying it. So thank you guys so much for coming on this journey with me and watching all of these that I put out. Without your support, and without you people viewing and commenting and liking, I would be absolutely nothing on this platform. So I'm just very thankful to have been given this opportunity at all. So thank you guys so much for watching these videos of mine. Higurashi definitely has a special place in my heart now. I really liked this series before making these videos, but after making these videos and bonding with the community and being treated so nicely by everybody, it definitely has a really big place in my heart now as one of my favorite series of all time. Once again, this video is probably too long to do the Q&A here, so I might have to save it for once this little Higurashi mini-series of mine is over. Anyways, thank you guys so much for everything. Thank you guys for watching these videos. Thank you for watching this one. Thank you to my patrons, Matt and Figar, and the new addition, Biscuit. Really just wanted to mention you, Biscuit. You're really cool so far. You guys mean the world to me. Everybody's supporting me. It's so nice. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys next time.